So a lot of you have asked me to do this video. Password complexity is a lie. Here's what actually keeps you safe. And wanted me to give my thoughts on it. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to do another one of those that you like where I just go through it cold. So I don't know if this guy is going to give you the best advice in the world or if he's getting it all wrong. We're going to see that. But first of all, and this is something I've talked about quite a bit because I used to do this back in my cybersecurity days. This is all about making a password that's difficult to crack. And so the question is, when you're making that big long password, how complex should you make it? And you have the basic things like don't base it on any dictionary words or things like that. We're just talking about a randomly generated password. And there are a lot of problems with complexity in being able to remember it or being able to type it easily. And the basic idea is that you can make a password complex, or you can make it just as strong by making it less complex, but longer. So here's what I have as an example to this. I generated a random number, and all of these different bits of noise and all these different formats, that's all different expressions of the exact same random number. And these will be very strong passwords, as we'll see. But the question is, how much of advantage do you get from complexity? So the way I know to make it the most complex is just to use all the ANSI characters, which is going to be very difficult to type, like you've got to type the 3/4. How do you type that? That's one of those Windows alt code things. But look, it only needs to be 11 characters long. Well, if you want to be a little more sane, you can just use the typable ASCII characters. These are all of the characters that you can type directly on a standard English 105 key keyboard. So we just make that a little longer, just 2 characters longer. But all those symbols are weird and they can be hard to remember. What if we don't want any symbols? And this is what sites are going to do. You must include symbols. You must include like 1 capital letter and 1 symbol and all the other things and stand on your head while you do it and all the crazy things they tell you to do. What if you didn't have any symbols in it? The alphanumeric password, just letters and numbers and no symbols, only has to be 1 character longer to be just as strong. Did you know that? Here's another way, because one of the problems of typing in these passwords is the shift key. You got to hit the shift key for the capital letters and for a lot of the symbols, and you hit the shift key for this one but not the next one. Getting the shift key held down for the wrong character is pretty much the #1 cause of typos in passwords. So what if you said, okay, we're not going to use the shift key? That's what I call typable without shift. These are lowercase letters, numbers, and all of the symbols you can type without using the shift key. So the / but not the question mark, things like that. Just 1 more character, 15 characters. And if you compare that to what they want you to do, the typable ASCII with all the weird symbols and uppercase letters and everything else, that's just 2 more characters. Just 2 more characters and you don't have to worry about the damn shift key. I was saying this long ago, decades ago, because Novell networks, the passwords were not case sensitive. And people were freaking out about, no, use the capitals. You got to use the capital letters. No, you don't. Just make it longer. 2 characters longer. And you will avoid the bane of every sysadmin for so long having to answer a support call of a user's password not working, and the problem is the caps lock key is on. That didn't have to happen. We have so many insane password policies. Lower numeric, lowercase letters and numbers, just 16. And then if you say, okay, forget the numbers, I'll just type lowercase letters, 17. So it's not that much longer. It is a bit longer if you want to go solely numeric. That has to be 24 characters. But that would be a situation where you had to, like if you're trying to type the password on a phone and those little keyboards they give you, they aren't very good. It's a lot easier to use a numeric keypad. Just make it longer, 24 characters. Again, these are all from the same random number, and so they're all going to be equally as strong. The question is, how strong? Well, that depends on how many passwords a second the hacker can try. And usually we're thinking that they've hacked into the website, they've grabbed the password database, and they've got all of the hashes, and they've got this system with, 8 GPUs in it that they're just going to start running at to crack this whole thing. How many passwords a second can they do? This is going to depend on how strong the algorithm is, which we'll get to in a minute. But just look at this range. So with this random number, if you went at 100 trillion guesses per second, it would take you 300 years to do that. I don't know of any cracking system that can do 100 trillion guesses per second. That's pretty insane. Normally, between 1 billion and 100 billion. But even if you can do 100 billion, which would be a big challenge, it would still be 300,000 years. And that would be if you're doing an older algorithm like MD5 or, well, if it's Land Manager, it's tissue paper. Some of those older algorithms aren't as good. And if they store it in plain text, you're screwed anyway. And we've seen that happen. They just store it in plain text. They get everyone's passwords. So the idea is we want to get as few guesses as possible that we need. So if we can get it down to where even with this massive multi-GPU setup, they can only do 1,000 guesses a second, what's that going to be? 1,000 million billion trillion? Almost 30 trillion years to crack your password. That's the goal. Now the thing is, you don't have any control over the algorithm that a website uses. They should be using something strong like bcrypt or Argon, but you can't trust it. So what you really want to do is use a password manager. Bitwarden is the one I use, but really at this point, they're all the same. So just pick the one you like. Don't fight over it. They're all good. But what you can do is randomly generate a password, a different one for every website you visit, and store it in its password vault. And if you render 40 characters, ASCII characters, the letters, numbers, and symbols, that will fill a 256-bit hash. That's got 256 bits of entropy. That will be like the maximum possible protection, and no one is cracking that ever. And you don't even have to remember it because it's in your password vault. That's the way to do it. It's all protected by a master password. I have a video on how I use Diceware passwords to make my master password. I did 5 words. Nowadays, they're recommending 6. But if you can beef up the algorithm, 5 is still going to be fine. So 6 will get you 80 bits of entropy, like we have here, where even with the impossible password cracker of 100 trillion guesses, it'll take 300 years for them to do it. But really what you want is to set their settings to where you slow them down as much as you can. The problem is you're slowing yourself down whenever you put in your master password. So this is going to depend on your slowest device. And I got an older device that I'm using Bitwarden on in addition to all the others. But at any rate, I want to show you the settings that I did, which I changed from the default. First of all, the algorithm, use Argon 2ID. Use that one. Don't use any others until a new one comes along if you're looking at this far enough in the future. But what we're going to do is we're going to try to get those numbers of guesses per second down as low as we can. And the best way to do that is to increase the memory. And I've got it set at 256 megabytes. That's increased from the default, but the only reason it's that low is because of that old device I use. If you're using devices that were made in the past few years, you can set this to 512 or even 1024, which is a gigabyte. Man, if you can use a whole gigabyte to this, you don't have to worry about any of the other settings. But you've also got to consider the iterations, and that's the other important one. The goal, in my opinion, is to get it to where when you type in the master password on your slowest device, it should take about 3 seconds. Now that's just when you type it in. If after that you're just using the fingerprint just to unlock it, that's fine. So it's only going to be once, like every time you reboot the device or whatever. So up these iterations, I have them up to 6. I think the default is 4 or 3 maybe, I don't remember. But get the memory up as high as you can and then get the iterations as strong as you can tolerate on your slowest device. If you want to go for 5 seconds because you're a patient guy, well, that's up to you. But you got to be careful because on a lot of those devices, if they see an app that's like tying up the processor for 5 seconds, they'll think it's misbehaving and cut them off. And that's probably going to be overkill anyway. Parallelism, I wouldn't worry about. This is a whole can of worms that even the experts disagree on. Because the whole idea here is to stop GPUs and ASICs from being able to run it massively. You get it enough memory, it won't have to worry about it. So I wouldn't worry too much about the parallelism. I would just set memory as high as your device will take. Remember, it's not the total RAM in your device. It's what you have free after you've booted everything up and all your other apps are running. See what you have free, get it up there as high as you can, and then increase the iterations until it's about 3 seconds. And then your 5-word diceware password will be sufficient, but you can do 6 as the current recommendation. But anyway, that's how I have mine set up. And yes, I've told you that because of Kirchhoff's principle. I should be able to tell you everything about my password except the actual rolls of the die that I use to generate the words, and you still can't get in. Alright, so let's get to this video if I can get my foot pedal working. Okay, I think I'm set up now. Alright, let's play the video.
Hey, quick question. How many of you have a password that looks like this?
Okay, so this password, we can see what it is. It's Troubadour, ampersand, Explorer, 2024, bang, and the E's are changed to 3s, and the 4, the A to a 4, the O to a 0. Yeah, hackers already know about this. This doesn't do you anything. Basic dictionary attack gets this. You got 2 dictionary words, you make little substitutions, put a number at the end, current year, birth year, whatever, and a common special character. No, they'll be able to get that quickly. So yeah, that's not a good one.
If you do, congratulations. You just made yourself less secure.
Yep.
Today I'm going to prove it, and then I'll show you the system that will actually work today, 2026, and beyond. I've seen people with 10-digit pins for their phone, or another one where the password is all special characters. Did you know that something simple to type, easy to remember, and having no special characters could actually be safer?
It all depends on how you generate it. I was talking about 6 diceware passwords, but that's if the passwords are randomly generated, and then you use something like the mnemonic that I detailed in that other video to remember it. If you go the other way, if you think of something you'll remember and make it into the password, that won't work. That'll be a low entropy password. You want a high entropy password. You want random generation. You don't want things from yourself. You want it from a random number generator. Yeah, this is like a 28 video. I'm going to skip around a bit. I'll watch the whole thing, but I'll edit to the important parts.
Brute force is the technique used to hack passwords using the trial and error method.
Yep.
It involves trying out every possibility.
And that's what you want to force them into. You don't want them to be able to take a shortcut like a dictionary attack, like taking the word troubadour and then substituting characters. That's going to give them a massive shortcut. You want them to start with the first one, then the next one, then the next, and have to go through the whole space of possible passwords to get to yours.
So if the password is a 6-digit PIN code, then the possible values to try are 0000000 to 999999. If your password is 40 digits with upper and lower case with numeric and special characters, how long would it take for the fastest supercomputer on Earth, in fact using multiple supercomputers, to hack it, assuming that the password app requires 1 millisecond to respond?
Yeah, and like I said, 40 digits fills the hash, so that's the maximum amount of entropy, and we're talking way past the heat death of the universe to do.
The answer is 10 to the 65th power in years. So this is way larger than the age of the universe, meaning it is not a threat. Now let's change this to the same rule, but with an 8-character password. And the answer is an attacker with a single machine, hundreds of thousands of years. An attacker with 1,000 machines in parallel, 100 to 200 years. An attacker with 100,000 machines, 1 to 2 years.
This is all assuming that the password is randomly generated.
So even just using the typical password format is pretty good. But let me shock you here. Again, doing some math, what about a 15-character password, alphabetical only, upper, lower, and random? And the important part here is random. The solution is uncrackable. This alone should stop you cold with this realization.
So he said a 15-character password, upper and lower, randomly generated. Mine was 14. Okay, so his is 1 character longer, but it's still hundreds of thousands of years.
A simple password with 15 letters is already uncrackable using brute force, but this doesn't assume real words. I said random letters, so that's still pretty complex. Rate limits. In the examples I gave earlier, and this is important to understand here, I assigned a time to enter each password at 1 millisecond per try. This is completely unrealistic in real life online. In the majority of password entry methods, including personal computers, there is always some delay built into password entry, sometimes several seconds after multiple attempts fail.
And all of that is completely useless because that's not how hackers crack passwords. They want to swipe that hashed up blob and then run the brute force attack on that on their own machines where they can do 100,000 attempts a second.
Which is thousands of times slower than the 1 millisecond I used to compute the examples I just gave. So depending on where you're entering the password, the rate limit or the number of attempts per window of time may not allow brute force attacks at all.
Yeah, except they're not going to attack it that way. They're not going to attack it directly on the site.
Attempts limit.
Oh, these are so useless.
This applies to internet platforms, phones, and computers, and this is the attempts limit. After you've tried some number of times, like 10.
I think the only thing I would say this is valid for is phones and other devices. If someone grabs your device and tries a bunch of codes to get in, and then you try a few times and it just locks the phone down for 24 hours or whatever, or if you have a backup, it might wipe it entirely. But other than that, for like a website, oh my God, just my days as a sysadmin. Someone would forget their password or leave the caps lock on and not realize it, do it 3 times and get locked out, and then have to call support out so that we can come unlock it for them. That's ridiculous because unless the hacker has gained entry to the building and is sitting down at the workstation, that's not how they're going to crack it. And if the hacker has broken in and sat down at the workstation, you've already lost, sunshine. Hate to break it to you. Physical access to the machine, it's all over.
Then the machine will lock up and not allow password entry for a day, or in some cases, forever. Most of the big platforms and all the best made sites have some attempts limit rate, like 10 tries per day.
I think the only reason they would do that is to discourage hackers from trying it that way, not because that's where the risk is, but because they don't want their servers being pounded. I think that's what they're thinking about. Oh, 2-factor authentication. Yes. This is one you should definitely do, but not, I repeat, not text or email like everyone seems to want to do. Texting and email are so insecure you should not rely on them for anything, especially when there's a nice option called TOTP, time-based one-time passwords. And this is where you're using something like Google Authenticator or Authy or something like that, and it generates a 6-digit code every 30 seconds. You log in with your password, then it asks you for that code, you put it in. That is secure. Using text or email is not. I've covered several stories in the past about how easy that is to get.
2-factor authentication. An even more severe slowdown now is that many platforms require a 2-factor authentication, like text or email, to even log in.
No, please, no, not text or email.
A successful password entry. This alone will make someone reconsider doing a brute force attack.
Not if it's text or email.
They will also send a notice if a new login is detected from a new machine, which is also a warning flag to you if someone is trying to perform a hack.
And that warning will often come way too late.
Who are subject to brute force?
All of us.
I'm just going to state it as bluntly as I can. It may not be apparent to some of you, but you are not that important.
Oh, okay, here's the old thing. You're just a random guy, you're not a juicy target, you're not a billionaire, you're not a bank, so they're not going to go after you. Yes, they will. Because they may not care about you personally or your personal information, but they can use that as a launching off point for another attack. If they can get it where they can get into your email and then use that email to sign up for something. Or this is a problem a lot of people have. They haven't set up online banking because they don't want to use it. And so a hacker gets in, gets their email, gets their information, signs up for that on their bank, and now they have a brand new account for your bank account, and they can move money around and do whatever they want. So you should, at the very least, even if you don't want to use online banking, go to the banking website and set up your user. That's called planting your flag. Even if you don't ever intend to use it, plant your flag. Don't let a hacker claim it. And there are so many ways this might happen. But even at that, if they can get all of your identifying information, including your social security number, which is out there from several attacks, and can weave a lot of random information from your personal life together, they can do the worst possible thing to you. They can steal your identity. This isn't really about you. It's about having an identity that they can sell to an illegal immigrant, a criminal who wants to do something without getting caught. This happens, and it ruins people's lives. People have actually committed suicide over this because someone else gets their identity, runs up all of this debt, commits all these crimes. Now, all of a sudden, without their knowledge, they're a fugitive. Then the cops show up one day. Hey, turns out you've already had your day in court. You've already been convicted. So we got to grab you and send you off to jail. And the worst thing about it is, as good as websites are about letting you change your password, the government will not let you change your social security number for anything. It has to be a really desperate situation. There are people who have been in the situation I just described, and the SSA wouldn't change their number. And that's absolutely insane. And look around, you can find stories like that. So yeah, people have their lives ruined. They lose their homes. They lose their jobs. They become unemployable. And some of them even commit suicide as a result. That is a terrible thing that you absolutely have to protect yourself from.
Bottom line, normal people are never brute forced.
Wrong.
Nation states might try on billionaires, but even they usually go another route.
Well, nation states usually don't have to because they can get your information all sorts of other ways.
Because complex passwords are time-consuming.
I mean, if your government can go and strong-arm your bank into freezing your funds and giving them your money, why would they need to hack your banking account?
To enter and subject to mistakes, they're often reused a lot, and that introduces the real risk.
And that's the advantage of using a password manager. You don't reuse passwords. You have your one password that you have to remember, the master password, to get into your vault. And then your vault has all of the randomly generated passwords, each one unique for each website and not reused. That is how you protect yourself. Because, I mean, even if it is true that you don't think there's any reason why you would be brute force, why take the risk when there's such a simple way to protect yourself? Oh, have I been pwned? This is a great resource, yeah. Yeah, sign up for this.
Have I been pwned? The real massive source of hacks is demonstrated by the website haveibeenpwned.com, which I will just abbreviate to HIBP. HIBP tracks all the hack data.
All right, he's talking real slow. Just go in, put in your email. It'll tell you if you've been in a breach. And you can type in your password. It won't even look at your password. It'll just hash it a bunch of different ways, locally on your machine very securely. And then it'll check its database to see if any of those hashes are in it. And if they are, change your password. Whatever site shows up as having been compromised for your email, go change the password. Passwords are easy to change. Just go there, change your password, generate a completely new 40-character random password using your password manager, unless they do something stupid like restrict it to 20 characters. Like, why? Why would they do that? I've heard people say, well, it's so they can fit in the database. They don't want to take... No. Passwords are always the same length once they're hashed. It doesn't matter if it's 1 character or 200 characters. It's always going to be hashed to that same length, usually 256 bits. It's not going to matter. And then you see absolute stupid sites like healthcare.gov. Oh my God. Whoever created that site should be thrown into the ocean or something. You go there and you make your password. You do have to put in a special character. Oh, but it cannot be these. It cannot be the brackets. It cannot be the parentheses. It cannot be... First of all, why do you care? That's all supposed to be hashed, isn't it? Second, I couldn't help but notice that those are the characters that are involved in a SQL injection attack. Don't worry about what that is. Just worry about this. if they're hashing the password, they shouldn't have to worry about that, because all those characters would be hashed up, mangled up. The hash is always going to be the same length, and it's always going to be the same format. So there's no reason for it. Absolutely no reason to restrict length. Absolutely no reason to restrict which special characters you can use. That's all crazy.
So some email providers, like our Braxman product, has some unique capabilities here since it can do unlimited aliases. This breaks the password reuse problem since you can use a different email address for every platform.
No! Ridiculous! That's insane! That's not a solution! Because guess what? They'll try that same password on a whole bunch of different email accounts. Make the password unique. If you're going to generate a random email, how is that any easier than just having your password manager generate a random password? Easiest thing to do is use your password manager to make a separate password for every website. Forget what this guy's saying, it's stupid.
Phishing.
Yeah, basically don't give out your passwords to people who email you. That's what a phishing attack is.
Phishing, which has that weird spelling, is the attack used by hackers to acquire your password directly, typically by social engineering.
So, a big thing is like they'll send you this email that appears to be from PayPal about how you just made a $300 transfer. And you're like, what? I didn't make that? And they're trying to get you into that panic mode so that you stop thinking and you click the link. You go to a website that looks like PayPal. You type in your password. What you're really doing is giving them your password because that's the fake site that they're using. Or it could be the real PayPal, but they've set it up as a man in the middle where they can capture the session. Either way, what you should do is separately go to a browser, type in paypal.com, and then look and see if there's been such a transaction. But don't click that link. Whatever you do, don't click that link.
Spear phishing.
Yeah, spear phishing is a phishing attack where they're really going after you personally. Because with a regular phishing attack, they just send out 1 million of them, and maybe 1 or 2 of them will fall for it. Spear phishing, they're trying to get you individually.
Spear phishing is a more targeted attack and is directed towards a single person instead of a broad hacking attempt. Using stolen personal data from the Equifax hack, for example, someone could trick you into thinking they know everything about you and then trick you into revealing PIN codes on ATM cards, for example. This kind of attack is typically more personal and is done through phone calls. It reminds me of the old scam where they call you and say they're from Microsoft Tech Support and they need to access your computer.
Yeah, just hang up on them. Don't ever accept calls like that. Never give out your passwords online. Never go to a URL that they give you and type in any passwords. Just hang up on them.
Now that you understand where the attacks actually come from, we can come up with a password strategy.
Randomly generate them with a password vault.
As demonstrated here, password complexity isn't particularly relevant. You do have to make a unique password so that the common password 123 type choices are removed. However, since most platforms are limited to 10 tries plus 2FA, there really isn't much of a brute force risk with any online
That's wrong.
platform.
I've already said why that's wrong.
Complexity doesn't help. Instead, focus on no reuse as the goal. Now, this is a very difficult goal as no reuse introduces
It's
the
not
problem of
difficult.
not being
Password
able to
manager.
remember
There's a bunch of them.
For multiple
Use one.
sites.
Randomly generate
I will
them.
introduce 2 password types. One for use with low security sites and one for high security sites and offline use.
That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. One password, one high security password that you have to remember that is the master password for your password vault. Then don't worry about low security, high security. Randomly generate a big long one. Just randomly generate it, unique for each one. This isn't difficult.
I'm going to start with the most secure version and then end with the one that's the most convenient, which is...
Yeah, I'm going to skip this whole part. It's just that dumb.
I want to create a distinction here. For the hundreds of sites that are not a financial risk, where there's no stored credit card, then the high security method of a non-reuse password is inconvenient and overkill.
There's no such thing as overkill. No such thing as overkill.
This is because these platforms like Reddit, X, TikTok, Netflix, Prime Video, and so on.
Oh my God. Okay. Here's why this is dumb. How many websites have you seen where in addition to typing in your email and password, it says, log in with X, log in with Google, log in with Facebook, log in with all these others. If you're using his low security password for X, then what does that mean? If someone gets onto X, that's not a minor thing. It's not just about, first of all, getting your X password and impersonating you on social media is bad. A lot of bad things have happened to people because of that. But in addition to that, that automatically gets the hacker access to your account on any other website that does it. They hit login with X. They log in with your X account. They can get to all those websites. If you already have an account there, they can impersonate you and do all the things. If you don't, they can set you up. They can set up your identity on that website and impersonate you. So, this is a big deal. I hate this. I absolutely hate what he just said, because being able to log in to something like X is a big deal. And it's so easy. Just use a password manager, randomly generate them. Don't worry about it.
I would group low-risk sites into 3 categories. Bucket A, social media. Bucket B, streaming and gaming. Bucket C, shopping and random sites.
Yeah, I got a bucket where I think all this belongs.
To unlock your phone, what is the best method? Typically, we choose between PIN, pattern.
All of those are secure if you can make them long enough. But that is a case where that limited number of tries helps you out. Because as long as you can't get it in the 3 tries or 5 tries or whatever, they're locked out from it. And even backed up and wiped. So that can be very secure.
Many sites now offer support for passkeys. This is actually fine, as passkeys are managed by an exchange of certificates and there is no exchange of biometrics.
Yeah, so the site has to support this. But if they do, it's a great thing. You can sign in with the passkey instead of a password. A passkey is always going to be secure. And if you remember years ago when I talked about Squirrel, which sadly didn't go anywhere, well, the basic technology for Squirrel has been swiped to put in for passkeys. So what you do is with the site, you set up a key, the website sets up a key. Those are the private keys. You keep them to yourselves. You exchange the public keys. So when you log into the website, instead of using a password, you answer a challenge from that website by signing it with your private key. The website already has your public key to identify you, and that identifies you securely to the site without having to have any secrets stored on the site. Because that's the problem. Passwords are secrets. They have to be kept secret. This way, the website has no secrets to keep. And a lot of websites will let you set up multiple passkeys in multiple different methods. So Bitwarden can do passkeys, where you just click on it and say, okay, here's the passkey, log in for me. That's simple. And it's secure. And it shouldn't be any more difficult than that. Really, as soon as we developed Squirrel, password should have been over. I have no idea why it got the hate and FUD that it did, that ultimately killed it. But at least the technology, to some extent, these are not Squirrel. These don't give you the full identity lifecycle management that was a big selling point we all thought for Squirrel. But at least you can do it one by one, site by site. But it's not just password managers you can do it with. You can do it with a biometric app on your phone, or you can do it with a separate app like a YubiKey, which is really secure. Unless you lose the YubiKey, then you've got a problem. Always think about that. Always think about, if you're on a train and you drop it and it goes through a crack in the door out on the tracks way back there somewhere and you have no idea where it is and no way to retrieve it. What do you do then? You've always got to be thinking about that. What if you lose the thing that your keys are on? Which is also, for example, why you should keep backups of your password vault. So make regular backups of those. But yeah, passkeys are a very secure way of doing it.
Here's what actually keeps you safe in 2026 and beyond. Right now, go to haveibeenpwned.com and check your main emails.
Yes, do that.
Today, change your email, banking, and Apple Google passwords to brand new 6-word passphrases you've never used before.
No, get a password manager and randomly generate them.
Add a YubiKey or passkey.
Passkeys are good if the site supports them. So if the site has a passkey, do that instead. Either way, unique per website, full strength, full security. Don't worry about some websites being lower security than others. No, treat them all like they're 100% big security websites.
This week, create 3 fresh 3-word passphrases and assign them to your buckets.
No, don't do the buckets thing. One password. One password, and you use it to unlock your password manager.
Social media, streaming and gaming, shopping, and random sites. Reuse inside each bucket only.
Never reuse, always randomly generate.
From now on, never click login links from email or text.
Yes.
Type the site yourself or use a bookmark.
Right.
Do those 4 things and you instantly become harder to hack than 99% of people on Earth.
Or do it the way I said and be a lot more secure.
Without living in a password manager and without typing 40-character nonsense every day.
See, that's not... Why is he poo-pooing password manager? That makes no sense. Password managers are the way to keep you secure. And that, first of all, I don't type it in every day because I have it set up where it's locked and I just unlock it securely. But I do have to type it in every now and then, but it's not that difficult. You get used to typing it in. Your fingers kind of know what to do. In fact, that's my advice when you make a new one. In addition to like spending the next day going over your mnemonic to memorize it, practice typing it a whole bunch of times. No, he's totally wrong. He is totally wrong. Use a password manager. I don't know how much of this is to sell his Braxman thing, whatever that is, but I don't know. Now you know the real skinny on it. Now you know probably more than you need to know. Just get a good password manager and use it. That's the thing. Thank you so very much for watching. Comments for the Common God, shares for the Share Throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell. And of course, donate.bogosity.tv keeps me doing what I do. Any way you can give, PayPal, cryptocurrency, Venmo, or regular support, Patreon, Subscribestar, Discord, any of those ways. Thank you so very much for watching. Until next time, stay strong and be free.